All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at this public meeting to share information on the Phoenix Sidewalk Shade Project. First off, we do have live Spanish translation available for this meeting. So at this time, I'll introduce Oscar, who will give instructions on how to listen to the meeting in Spanish.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Oscar Monroy. Voy a estar interpretando para esta reunión. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor marque al 602-534-1000. Luego va a poner el número de reunión 572-71 y luego el signo numeral. Gracias.
All right. Thank you, Oscar. We'll do a round of introductions for the project team and then get started. My name is Mary Wright. I work with the City of Phoenix in the Office of Heat Response and Mitigation as the Built Environment Specialist. I'm the project owner for this project, representing the Heat Office.
Hi, my name is Lana Nabati. I'm a senior civil engineer with Street Transportation Department. My role involves leading the design team and provide help and support during the construction phase.
Hello, I'm Barry Sparkman. I'm a public art project manager with the City of Phoenix Arts and Culture Department.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for making the time to join us. Dave Hondula here from the Office of Heat Response and Mitigation. Really proud to be part of this collaborative team.
And I'm Heather Murphy, very pleased to moderate this multi-department public engagement opportunity. Heather Murphy with Street Transportation.
We'll now invite some of our partners from the design team to introduce themselves, starting with Carlos.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carlos Sanchez. I am with TYLN International. I am the project manager and the design consultant working directly with the city. Thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Ryan Wozniak, senior transportation planner and urban designer on this project. Happy to be here.
All right. I don't believe Adam is on, but he was an integral part of the team. So we definitely wanted to acknowledge his contribution. All right. So for the agenda today, we'll provide a brief overview of the project and then get into the design concepts for the structures and then where the structures will be located, and we'll wrap up with our expected timeline. So this project did begin with approval by City Council to spend $3 million on shade structures in the public rights-of-way using funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. Specifically, the project called for funding 25 freestanding shade structures in the public rights-of-way to improve walkability in neighborhoods with limited shade coverage. In addition, we were asked to commission local artists to design structures that reflect local context and culture and meet engineering and safety standards for public infrastructure. The allocation of these funds reflects what the city has heard from the community, that we need more shade. At this time, I'll pass it off to David Hondula to discuss some of the community desire for shade that we have heard and how the city is responding.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks again to you and teammates for your leadership on this project. We're really excited to be sharing with and learning from the community today, and as Mary alluded to, delivering on a long-standing need and really demand from the city to improve shade coverage, especially in certain neighborhoods. There are decades of public comments, surveys, questionnaires, et cetera, that we can look to for evidence that there's a strong public interest in having more shade. We have recent data as well. These are data points collected from more than 1,500 respondents to a public questionnaire associated with our newly released Shade Phoenix Plan draft. And in that questionnaire, we heard that 90% of residents said there's not enough built shade or trees in the city, and nearly 40% characterized the lack of built shade in the city as severe. Respondents to that questionnaire also had very specific ideas about where more built shade is needed in the city. And you can see some of the example quotes pulled from that questionnaire here on the bottom. And these particular examples reflect a theme of transportation mobility. For example, the first example respondent here: crosswalks, bus stops, sidewalks, especially those where trees can't be planted. And that resonates certainly with feedback that we've heard in other forums and from other community engagement in the past. What does the community envision for shade? Well, here's one example as we move to the next slide. This is a vision that came from a community-led process that engaged multiple City of Phoenix neighborhoods several years ago by our partners at the Nature Conservancy. And you can see a vision for a streetscape here that is providing abundant shade. On this particular rendering of the community vision, you can see that there is in fact a built shade structure right at a crosswalk on this particular street segment. And again, abundant shade in places where people are walking. Why is shade such a priority for the community? I think the residents of Phoenix are absolutely experts in understanding what it takes to be successful and thriving and healthy and safe in our hot city. And as we go to the next slide, we'll take just a brief moment to look at the science of why that's the case. Shade makes a tremendous difference on the body heat load as we move throughout our desert city. Whether it's from trees or from built shade structures like we're talking about today, shade can reduce the body heat load by more than 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And compared to the cooling that might be provided by a tree, for example, in terms of the air temperature, this benefit of shade dwarfs it. The heat office and our partnering departments are certainly interested to increase both tree canopy cover and built shade coverage throughout the city. Today, we're here talking about a built shade initiative, but there's plenty happening on the urban forestry front as well. And I think it's this recognition that we all have it as part of our innate day-to-day experience in the city, understanding how valuable shade is, this difference it makes on the body heat load. This is why we see ourselves and our neighbors trying to squeeze every drop of shade out of the city as we go about our day-to-day lives. Just yesterday, our team was out at one of the intersections proposed for this location, and we saw an older resident on a mobility device who just happened to get lucky that the shade from a nearby light pole was was over the area where they were waiting to cross the street with what looked like groceries trying to go home. It shouldn't be a matter of happenstance and luck that people have access to the shade they need in the city. Well, we think we can do a lot better, and we think this project is delivering on that need. And our elected leaders, as we go to the next slide, have recognized this as well. We can find in many city planning documents a goal of some kind to add shade, whether it's in our climate action plan, the specific goal to increase shade provided by trees or constructed shade in flatland parks and streets right-of-ways, whether it's in our draft Shade Phoenix plan or in village character plans. There's a lot of support, interest, appetite, and need expressed in city planning documents to add shade. And here are some examples as we go to the next slide. As we look at the village character plans, all 6 villages that have been identified as candidates for shade structures for this particular initiative call for more shade in some form. And you can see some example quotes from the village character plans, again, reiterating that theme on pedestrian and transportation, the transportation mobility and the pedestrian experience. Amenities for pedestrians such as shade, water, seating, bus shelters, and the integration of trees and shade into the design of new development and redevelopment projects throughout the city, with an example given there of light rail stations. So as we go to one more slide, I did want to take a moment in case anyone has not had the chance to see the draft Shade Phoenix plan that was introduced to our city council this June, to invite you to review it and provide some input on it. This project that we're talking about today, the ARPA right-of-way shade structure project, aligns very closely with several of the values that the Shade Phoenix plan adopts, including the focus on people, the recognition that shade is a critical infrastructure and community service, and the value of the Shade Phoenix plan to lead with an environmental justice and equity lens. this project will deliver shade in some of the places in the city that have the least shade today. And if you'd like to review that plan and provide a comment on it, please visit our website, Phoenix.gov/heat. But with that, let's return our attention to the topic at hand, the design and specifics for the shade structure program. Thank you, Mary.
Great, thank you, Dave. At this point, we'll transition into discussing the design concepts for the shade structures. We worked with our team of design consultants to design structures that were safe, beautiful, resistant to tampering, and of course, maximize shade. So now I'll pass it off to Ryan from TY Lin to share more about the design process and the final design concepts that were developed in collaboration with J2 and 3 local artists commissioned by our Arts and Culture Department.
Good evening, everybody. As we get started here, we'll bring up some inspirational imagery. This all was the backdrop of our beautiful landscape that provided a lot of inspiration to the forms and ultimately the art that would come through in not just delivering on the physical aspects of shade, but also making sure that we're beautifying the streetscape at the same time, all in honor of these heat mitigation plans David reviewed earlier. So with this, we moved into the design approach and we came up with 3 concepts. The 3 concepts range from this relatively simple one to much more intricate. The one that you're looking at here stands 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide. It has 2 variety of foundation types that were designed to meet the different needs of different sites. One being a potted version that stays relatively completely above ground other than some simple anchoring. And then one that gets a drill shaft foundation all the way down, which can sometimes cause conflicts with underground utilities, which is why we wanted to have a variety of both. You see that the panels are constructed of 5 unique panels on this one. The largest of the 4 would be these quadrants that are designed by Isaac Caruso, and you see this intricate concept that we're still working through the details and making sure that the panel, the metal panel that would set in there, get fastened to the frame, would be strong and meet all of the necessary design and safety features that we want to ensure that we put in the public realm. The next concept is a variety of that last one was, by the way, inspired by the cactus blossom. This one is a much more varied version of the cactus blossom with additional panels and this interesting lean and cantilever approach. This one being larger than 10 feet wide at its largest. It's I believe 17. I can go back and look at my notes, but we have a little over 8 feet on one side and a little over 12 feet on the highest point. With this lean, it did not provide the variety of foundation types for both potted and drill shaft into the ground. So this is only drill shafted. And so this one will not fit as many locations. The scale of it doesn't fit as many locations. The underground utility conflicts, keep it from being an option for many locations. But this beautiful concept was something that we tried to make sure was least possible in some of the locations that we were tasked with providing shade. You see some of the concepts that came from Heidi Dolphin, the artist that was selected to create the panels for this. And given the variety of panels, you see a variety of concepts that are still making their way through the final design process. Again, making sure that we're checking all the marks on safety and hazards and strengths. This concept is the last of the 3 built shade concepts, and this one was adapted from a butterfly. The modern edges and everything obviously help with manufacturing processes and things, so you don't see many curved lines and things of that nature. But still, the concept lives in sort of the artist's rendition as well. You see the curved lines and the etched laser cut panels that would set into this concept. This concept is a little larger than the smaller cactus blossom. It ranges in about 12 feet wide and is 9 feet tall on one side and about 11.5 feet tall on the other side. It's going to provide a little bit of variety in terms of how the panels are angled and gives us a little bit more, another tool in our tool chest in order to tackle providing shade in challenging locations. This one as well offered the opportunity for both a drill shaft foundation and the potted foundation.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. So with those designs in mind, I'll now discuss the planned locations for the shade structures. The structures will all be located on major arterials, either adjacent to stoplights at intersections or located at pedestrian crosswalks with signal lights. These are locations where people are forced to wait for the signal to turn, which I'm sure we all know can feel like a really long wait in the summer. And so people can get a lot of benefit from a smaller amount of shade. These are locations where trees don't make sense because they can grow to block the traffic lights, or their roots can disturb underground infrastructure that's commonly found near traffic lights, things like power lines, water, gas, and that sort of thing. And these locations have very high visibility for safety. The locations were selected to provide temporary relief from the sun as residents move about the city. So in selecting the intersections for this project, we used a few criteria to filter to certain areas of the city. First, due to the funding requirements for the American Rescue Plan Act, we were limited to locations within or adjacent to federally designated high need areas, which are those areas highlighted in pink on this map. In this case, high need areas have a majority of households designated as low income. We also filtered to areas with relatively high numbers of pedestrian, foot, and bicycle trips, and a high percentage of households with no vehicle. This was done in order to locate the structures where people would most likely be walking around even in the heat of the summer. We also located many of the structures in areas with a relatively high number of heat-related 911 calls. Those areas are shown in the purple, pink, and orange areas of the map on the right. And lastly, we also prioritize areas with low percentages of tree canopy in order to increase shade in areas that don't receive a lot of tree shade already. So we began with 32 starting locations. Some locations were eliminated, and at this time we have 25 locations moving forward. In each given location, we did our best to maximize shade in the afternoon, which is that hottest time of the day. And at this time, I'll pass it off to Ryan from TYLN once more. He's the expert in location-specific constraints, and he'll discuss why some locations were eliminated and why some structures had to be moved in ways that might reduce shade at that optimal afternoon time frame.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, placing these variety of structures in a variety of locations was no easy task. Luckily, we did have a palette of shade structures to choose from, some that eliminated those underground utility conflicts with having an above ground pot. But we've also learned that, after engaging a variety of stakeholders and private utility companies, whether we're talking about water or sewer or also public infrastructure of traffic signals, there's clearances that need to be observed. There's maintenance regimens that need to be observed. There's sight lines that need to be honored so that we're not blocking any traffic signals or pedestrian signals. We wanted to make sure that where we place these did not, create any conflicts for access either. We definitely kept a keen eye at terms of the Americans with Disabilities Act and ensuring that these structures did not encroach upon folks' access routes that are required, no matter what their mobility device or mobility abilities are. We wanted to be very cognizant of when placing a 3 and 8 inch round pot in some of these locations that we did not create any conflicts for folks that need to get through. So ensuring all that and mapping these out and the underground utilities, the above ground utilities, the spaces and distances that we needed to provide between that and other issues at these corners, which are really sought after corners with lots of interests and a lot of competing interests. We did our best to ensure that those shadows, the shade study that we conducted, did target those afternoon hours with the hottest parts of the year, so that, again, that air temperature, that difference of heat load that people experience could be understood. And so, yeah, the other things that you don't necessarily always see in reality is also the limits of right-of-way. Back of right-of-way is a vertical line. It's not just something that gets mapped down on the ground. So we wanted to make sure that these structures fit in there as well. The cactus blossom, I believe I described as a 10-foot structure. We also made an adaptation to that to make it also an 8-foot wide structure, just for these types of limitations. So that original concept has actually 2 varieties to it. Is there another slide, Mary? Or is that conclude this slide?
I believe that's it. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, great. So this time I'll quickly go through each of the candidate locations, and then we'll move up, and then we'll wrap up with our timeline and move into questions and comments. I should add that these are our candidate locations. We don't yet have a construction contract secured, so these are what are in our design plans. But again, no shovels in the ground or anything at this point yet. All right. So, yeah, okay. We'll go ahead and move ahead. So the locations are Dunlap and 19th Avenue at the northwest, northeast, and southeast corners, Northern and 35th Avenue on the northeast corner, Camelback and 23rd Avenue on the southeast corner, Camelback and 19th Avenue on the northeast and southwest corners. We also have Indian School and Central Avenue on the northeast and southwest corners, the north side of McDowell west of 16th Street, Roosevelt and 16th Street on the northeast, southeast, and southwest corners, Van Buren and 28th Street on the southwest corner, on the south side of Van Buren west of 35th Street, and the north side of Van Buren east of 36th Street. We also have some sites on the north side and south side of McDowell, west of 67th Avenue, Indian School and 59th Avenue on the northwest and southwest corners, and the north side of Thomas, west of 43rd Avenue. And lastly, we have a few sites on Southern and 19th Avenue on the northeast and southwest corners, Southern and 24th Street on the southeast and southwest corners. So as I said, we're wrapping up design of the structures as we speak. We should have a construction contract in place by the end of the year. Construction is planned to begin mid-2025 with completion by fall of 2026. All right, thank you all for your attention. This presentation has been recorded and will be posted online, so you can refer to it later. For more information and to keep track of the project, you can go to Phoenix.gov/heat. You can also reach out to myself or Lana. So at this time, we'll open it up for questions and comments, and I'll pass it off to Heather to moderate. Thank you, Heather.
Absolutely. Great job to the project team for presenting all that information in a fairly short, 25 minutes or so. So the Office of Heat Response and Mitigation has heard so much community input throughout this process. Residents just like you have asked the city to place a priority on natural and structural shade, like Dr. Handula suggested, which helped us get where we are today. This project is funded by a grant with the specific purpose of installing shade where possible and where it's most needed. So your continued engagement and input is valued, and there's a way you can provide direct input on the citywide shade study at Phoenix.gov/heat. There is some time ticking on that, so There is a deadline of August 31st, so another couple of weeks. And with that, the project team asked me to moderate the Q&A session. We had a number of people who submitted questions and a number of people who signed up to speak. Quite a few of the questions were probably answered in the presentation. So we'll look at a mix of the pre-submitted questions. We'll also call on Oscar to see if we have anyone on the Spanish language line who would like to ask a question. So first, I would like to call on David B. David, allow me to locate you and unmute you. And you are unmuted. Please go ahead. And after David B, we'll call on Finley. David, go ahead. I usually refrain from saying people's last names, but in case we have more than one David, this is David Bickford. You're unmuted. All right. I remuted him, and let me go ahead and unmute Finley, and after Finley, I'll unmute Michelle T. Finley, you're welcome to go ahead. Okay, no Finley. All right, I'm going to try you again, Finley. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, now we can.
Wonderful. Sorry about that. So I am not sure whether or not this falls under the same purview, so feel free to say that it doesn't. But do you know if, since we're talking shade and everything, if there is going to be any progress on either fixing the shaded areas for bus stops or adding more? Because there's a significant amount of them in the greater Phoenix area that don't have any shade, and that's honestly pretty dangerous in the middle of the summer waiting for buses.
Hi, thanks for the comment, Finley. We'll be happy to send you a direct link. There is a synopsis of where public transit stands right now with increasing shade at bus stops in the draft Shade Phoenix plan. The specific numbers are there. And it does include a summary of their plan to continue adding more shade structures. I believe the projection is that they will have a very high percentage of stops shaded within the decade at the pace that they're going. But the details are in the plan, and we'd be happy to connect you with our public transit colleagues for further conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. And then Michelle T, I'm about to unmute you. Michelle, please go ahead.
We have some littles in the background, so pardon their noise. I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation, being so concise and sharing everything very clearly. I was also wondering about the bus stops, and so I'll kind of cut that portion of my comment. I was curious if there had been much exploration or study into adding shade to existing traffic poles. And then my other question was if there was a place, because I'm sure you guys have this information already, but just to see how much is being spent and used to increase tree shade in the city. Thank you.
Happy to take the first part of that. We did explore the traffic pole option. There are limitations in terms of the stresses that can be placed on those. And so out of due caution of liabilities, that was eliminated early on in our study. It's not to say that it's infeasible forever, but given the scope of our project here and our timelines, we eliminated that question. For your second part, I'll pass the mic.
Thank you. Yes, the draft Shade Phoenix plan does include a summary of the planned investments in urban forestry, and there are really significant increases that we are on the cusp of, including a new $10 million investment thanks to the U.S. Forest Service. But yeah, more details are in the plan, and we are very hopeful and excited about a real growth trajectory for adding trees in a manner that's aligned with the values you saw on the slide earlier. So thank you for the question. We'd be happy to have more dialogue there.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Caroline L. And after Caroline, we'll go to AJ. Caroline, go ahead. You have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate all the effort that has gone into putting this together. So my question is with regards to, when we do capacity analysis of roads and streets, we do traffic studies, right? So when you came up with these specific locations, did you do a pedestrian flow analysis to figure out which intersections really needed these shade structures? And my follow-up question would be, is this plan going to be expanded into specific areas? Like, we are doing a lot of work at the Hatcher Corridor, and that's one of those areas that has very limited right-of-way. So we are looking for shade structures in places like these, which do get pedestrian traffic because kids go to school, walk the streets, but there is no way for us to plant those trees. So if you can help me understand a little bit of both these questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
I can speak to the pedestrian side of things. We did, in a partnership with researchers from Arizona State University, use essentially what you're discussing, a pedestrian flow data set to make sure we were targeting locations that had high amounts of walking foot traffic and biking traffic.
Thanks, Mary. And in response to the second question, thank you for it, Ms. Lobo. While there is not specifically funding right now for a continuation of a project that looks just like this one, we are certainly continuing to explore opportunities and think about how to do that. There are a number of initiatives in the Shade Phoenix Plan draft that speak to your question, and whether it would be through an explicit program or through policy instruments that encourage or make it easier to have private developers adding shade in public space. We see the need along there with you, and we'll absolutely continue the conversation.
Excellent. AJ, you are up next, and after AJ, I'll call on Ann S.
Okay, so I walk and I bike a lot. I'm a user of shade, definitely. I've been known to choose my path and cross the road just to get more shade. I'm going to talk specifically about 19th Avenue and Camelback because that's the one closest to me. Right now, we have many people loitering where there's already shade. I've had to call the police on drug use, people definitely not hopping on the bus. So as much as I would love shade at 19th Avenue and Camelback, first of all, the northeast corner has a beautiful tree and it has a building that does cast shade. But unfortunately, right now, even this morning, there were people just loitering along that little pony wall, taking advantage of the shade. So I don't know if we added another shade structure, basically the size of a 10 by 10 tent, if that would just cause loitering there. 2.5 minutes is different in September than it is in August. I will give you that. So I'm just concerned that the shade at 19th Avenue and Camelback, even the southwest corner, there's already that white retention or irrigation area. many times there's people already just, sitting on that or sitting behind it. So I see Nick is on the call. I heard that construction would start in 1 more year. I'm hoping in 1 year that the safety plan on 19th Avenue, which includes 19th Avenue and Camelback, takes my concern away. But I'm not sure if a year is enough time. I don't want these shade areas to become another spot to loiter, like the bus stops are already being loitered at and other shade places at that intersection and very close to there. So that's my concern. I would love the shade, and I hope in a year that we're ready for it. I just don't know. So thank you for letting me share my ideas.
AJ, thanks very much. We hear and appreciate your concern. That's why we're here today, and why why we're really trying to engage across city departments to understand what the concerns might be. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
All right, next is Ann S. Ann, you're unmuted. Please go ahead. And right after Ann, I'm going to try David B again. So stand by, David.
Your presentation and your designs are beautiful. I actually live in the county, and my concern is more for personal residential shade. It just seems that there's so many of these straight shade structures going up, and for them to be built sturdy and proper, that some of these setback variances need to have a waiver. And it's a very costly and lengthy process to go through. But having these shade structures protects our vehicles. Sometimes the way the setbacks are now, shade wouldn't even cover your vehicle. And I live in the county where it's a retirement community, and getting in a hot car, could actually burn the skin. And that's going to go for everyone in the city as well. And so trees, I mean, they need water, they need maintenance, and they also get damaged in the storm. So I really love your fancy designs that are just awesome. And so, but mine is more of a residential need, just have shade for my home so I can protect my assets. And trying to get those setback and variance waivers modified so that we can have them.
And thanks so much for the comment. From the city standpoint, our planning and development department colleagues are certainly key partners in the Shade Phoenix plan. And we also participate in a regional roundtable conversation where their peers from other jurisdictions will also participate. So we'll be sure that your feedback is heard in those settings. Thank you very much.
All right, David Bickford, I've unmuted you again. Let's try this again.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, great. Thank you. Sorry, I was having problems with my microphone before. First, I just want to echo the comment about loitering. It is a difficult situation when dealing with homeless populations, but we have to keep structures that are built available for their intended use. And when they are taken over by people who are spending an inordinate amount of time there, it makes them unavailable for their intended use, whether it's public transit, shade mitigation, or whatever else. That's a very delicate balance, but it cannot be neglected. My own comment is simply, or really a question is, has there also been a consideration of the zoning at these intersections so that future land use will provide more shade just in the design of the buildings themselves, more multi-story buildings with less setback from the streets? When your typical arterial intersection is a Circle K on one corner and a Walgreens on another and a QT on another, those are all set back with parking in front. We have a chance in the light rail corridor, in conjunction with Reinvent Phoenix and other initiatives, to rethink that with denser structures closer to the street. Is that being coordinated in this plan?
Dave, thanks so much for the question. And I think, as you alluded to, your questions certainly extend beyond the scope of this particular shade structure initiative. Not being in the planning and development department, but working closely with them, my sense is that that is a conversation that's playing out across numerous strategic initiatives at the city, including the Shade Phoenix plan. And we'll be sure that your feedback is heard in that setting. But I do know that that is a topic of ongoing dialogue as we move forward on tree and shade matters more generally. So thank you, and appreciate your observations.
I can add to that just a bit. I know that it was beyond the scope of the data that was provided to us, so the design team, but we did look at places where the zoning activity was active, and just being aware that there may be privately provided shade did factor into our own thinking about where shade was most appropriately invested for this project.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oscar Monroy, can I put you on the spot and see if we have any questions from the Spanish line?
No questions.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Ayo, AYO. You're unmuted. Please go ahead. And after Ayo, we'll
yes,
call
no,
on Keisha.
I was wondering actually, thank you all for the presentation first. I had a question about the structures themselves. Is there any talks about the materials that they're going to be used? Because I've seen and I've used a lot of the shade structures that have a lot of metal in them, and you have heat radiating from them instead of actually like helping as a cooling station. So I was wondering about the materials that are being used, and if that's a point of consideration.
The materials that are being used are steel and concrete. Those materials will radiate heat, but the concrete will be in shade, so that will reduce that factor of that radiance. The gauge of the metal that will be in the panel should be thin enough to where the heat gain from that, it shouldn't be very long lasting. We will love to observe and learn from this project, and be looking for additional feedback if our assumptions turn out to be skewed in any way.
If I might piggyback on your comment, Ryan, I think this project has done very well to operate within the known recommendations for adding shade in the public area, what is going to be safe and durable, resistant to the various loads that are out there. But the city is trying to innovate in this space as well. Barry represents the Office of Arts and Culture, who's on the line, who's partnered with our Office of Innovation and our team on a Shade Structure Innovation Challenge. And we are looking forward to seeing temporary shade installations added in public parks next year in the city, where I think, Barry, it'd be fair to say we are seeing some creative ideas about materials choice and other components. So more to come on that down the road. But we certainly hear the concern there about the materials we're using, and we're going to learn from this innovation challenge what else could work in the urban setting. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next I'll go to Keisha, and then after that, Bruce. So let's see, I'm just trying to find you. There we go. You're unmuted, Keisha.
As well, my name's Keisha. I do have some questions. Number one, about the height of these structures. I don't know if I missed that. I jumped on a little bit late, but wanted to clarify what that height was, of how high those are, if there'll be various heights throughout the area. And then also my other statement I did want to bring up is the maintenance of trees. So a lot of trees have been being planted within the city. I drive down 43rd Avenue, 51st Avenue. Trees had been placed, but they're not maintained. So a lot of the trees die, or there's water leaks where you see an irrigation line that's flooded. And there is confusion. I know I've called those in, and departments are like, well, we don't know where the water's coming from, and nobody really deals with it. And next thing you know, 25 trees are been pulled up that were just planted a year ago, and then they never come back. So I'm not sure what that process is, or maybe I'll email one of you and figure out maybe what department that needs to go, or if somebody oversees those things. But number one is the height. And then also, that was also my concern, was the heat radiating from those materials. as well. So
Thank you for the question. So the most prominent structure that's planned to be used is 10 feet tall by 10 feet wide. It also comes in an 8-foot wide variety, just so that we can fit in tight spaces. There's the butterfly, which has a tilt to it. It's 8'10" on its lowest side. And it's 12 foot. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm the wrong one. It is 10 feet and 5 inches on its tallest side. And then the one with the greatest tilt and greatest mass is our multi-paneled cactus blossom, which at its highest is 12 foot 5 inches, and at its lowest is 8 foot 10 inches, and spans over 15 feet at its lengthwise.
Thank you, Ryan.
And on the second part of the question, our heart breaks with you when we see new trees that don't survive, and maintenance is a really serious focus of the Shade Phoenix plan. We have heard, certainly from the community time and time again, but also from our peers in the city that we have work to do on maintenance. So I look forward to any feedback you might have about what's in the plan so far, but this will also be an important theme as we move toward a presentation of the final plan with our city council in the fall. Our budget and research department at the city is helping us with a study of some of our landscape maintenance processes, which we're really learning a lot from. And in the interim, as we have concerns about tree maintenance, you're certainly welcome to use the My Phoenix 311 portal. You could email the heat office, heatreadyphx@phoenix.gov, or you may have other contacts as well at other departments. But we know there's a really important need here to improve maintenance and ensure that all the new investments that are coming can reach maturity.
All right, Bruce, you are up now. Bruce, I see you on here twice. You might be on 2 different devices, so I've unmuted you. Please go ahead. All right, going once, Bruce, going twice. All right, maybe Bruce stepped away. We'll come back to him in a second then. And next I'd like to call on Carrie W. Let me go down here and find you, Carrie. You're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello. I'd like to make a couple of comments. The designs are absolutely beautiful. But I also echo some of the sentiments of previous commenters that providing shade might be a draw for criminal transients and drug activity. I'm specifically interested or concerned about the 19th and Dunlap corners. Right now, there's already a transit big canopy over there that is a hotbed for criminal activity. And often you can't even get to the bus stop on the west side because of the number of loiterers there. So I really question why we're concerned with putting up shade structures when we should be dealing with other things. This area is very, very heavy in drug activity, and I think the shade structures will draw more of that to our area. Thanks. Oh, I do have one other question. When you're talking about high visibility for safety, what are you talking about? Visibility for the individuals crossing the street, or the availability of police officers to see what's going on underneath the shade structure? Thanks.
And did you want to handle the more technical question there on visibility?
Sure, I can. I believe that question does have various angles to it. So I'll take the traffic safety part of it. These bases were designed at a height that allows for visibility through the intersection for when drivers are making judgments about how to turn and when to turn. These are called site visibility triangles, and anything that is less than 3 feet is basically considered not obstructing that site visibility triangle. So we stayed within those parameters.
Mary, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll jump in to that. That's absolutely part of it, and also part of it is that they are located on major arterials. The structure itself only has that one post in the middle. There's no vertical component blocking things from view, so it's just a highly visible location where everyone can see what's going on.
Just to wrap up on this one, Heather, I'll just acknowledge and appreciate the concern about the location and the needs to balance. Of course, our hope is to be able to have intersections in the city that are safe and shaded, and that's why we have such a good team involved here in thinking this through. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to call on Julia, then Nadine, and then Pam. And then I have a question. There are two different marks, and I'm wondering if Mark F and Mark B are the same person. Maybe just chat me in the chat if you have something, if you intended to speak. So Julia first, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, just double checking because I know we had audio issues before. No, so my concern with it, especially at the 19th Avenue in Dunlap, like the previous woman had said, there's a lot of transients there. There's a lot of drug activity. A lot of people don't want to wait at that bus stop because of it. I know with the light rail, they're adding security guards and officers, but that still doesn't help with the issues that people are seeing. And then also, who's going to maintain them? Because I know a lot of the bus stops and metal artwork that has been done by the city, it's not maintained very well. I know there's maintenance issues, so it gets graffitied, it gets tagged, it gets damaged. I've seen that in Sunny Slope where they do beautiful art pieces for shade, and then it just gets destroyed, and then nobody maintains it, so eventually it just gets thrown away or put into a dumpster. And the park ones are great. I do think it's great arts and culture is doing that, but if I'm right, the park ones are temporary, and then the artist gets to take them back, and these are permanent. But is the city going to maintain them? Or is it going to be an issue again with the trees that we have where we plant these trees, but then nobody maintains them and then eventually it has to go away? And I love the designs, but if it's going to bring more, traffic and more issues with people who are homeless, who are on drugs, is it worth adding into the environment, especially in 19th Avenue and Dunlap? Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback. Yes, the city will be responsible for maintaining these structures. I do hear your concern about the challenges in the past of maintaining trees and built shade structures, and that's important feedback for us to keep working on in the new shade plan. Yes, we hear the additional concern related to this location, concerns about crime, our unsheltered neighbors, and we will take that back with the team and keep thinking about what the right approach is in this location.
Thank you. Next is Nadine and then Pam, and then I'm going to try to see if we can get Bruce back. We'll try him one more time. Nadine, you're unmuted. Please go ahead. All right, I'm clicking Nadine. Let me try and unmute you. You might be muting yourself a second time. Okay, Nadine, I don't seem to be able to unmute you. Let me try Pam and then I'll try again. Pam?
I have to reiterate that has been
okay.
Pam,
we're getting a really bad echo, so let me try.
I have nothing else on. Is that better?
Pam?
Yep.
Pam, try again. We're getting a really bad feedback echo.
And I'm hearing it. I don't hear anything else. So.
Okay, Pam, are you listening on more than one device, perhaps?
Nope.
Okay, anyone, any ideas? We're just getting a lot of feedback that you're coming through as,
Just following Adam's suggestion there in the chat, I think, Pam, if you could turn off your speaker while you speak and then turn the speaker back on, we'll be thrilled to respond to your comment.
Okay. I have to reiterate everything that's been said about 19th Avenue. Starting at 19th and Camelback, I'm just going to have to be blunt. It's kind of a shit show. And at 19th Avenue and Bethany Home, every place that has shade has someone who is inebriated or high on drugs, laying on the sidewalks, laying everywhere. I am thankful you didn't pick 19th and Bethany and 19th and Glendale because of the drugs and the crowds of criminal transients that hang on those corners. The police have finally gotten a little control on it, but 19th Avenue and Dunlap is horrible. That southwest corner where all the stuff was for light rail that we said in the first place was just a dumb idea. They've had to take that and block it off because there are so many homeless and drug addicts that hang there. I suggest you take those three structures and put them in Sunny Slope along the Hatcher corridor, where they're needed more than they're needed at 19th Avenue and Dunlap. I think this is just a place where more of these people are going to hang out. And if you knew how hard we have had to work to get 19th and Glendale to a point where school kids can walk by without being offered drugs. Every bus stop there is filled with people. You could not get on a bus at one of those bus stops if your life depended on it. And our officer who's in charge of transient cleans those bus stops up pretty much 3-4 times a week. So I'm glad you didn't put them at Glendale. I'm glad you didn't put them at Bethany. And I think the ones at 19th and Camelback and 19th and Dunlap need to go away. That's all I have
Thank you,
to
Pam.
say. Sorry, I'm such a negative Nelly.
Thanks, Pam. We do appreciate the feedback and the suggestion of additional or alternative locations. Appreciate that.
Bruce, you're up next. Please go ahead. Okay, Bruce. All right. I was texting with Bruce through the chat and we're acknowledging him. Let's see if maybe you could put your question or comment in the chat. For those people who did submit comments when you registered, those will be entered into the record in the interest of time. And since we're already at the 1 hour mark, I think maybe I should turn to the questions that were submitted that haven't come up yet and see if we can get the project team to address any of those. Sound good?
Absolutely, Heather. Thanks. And I'm not sure if Oscar has any updates from the Spanish speaking audience, but yeah, be happy to move on if there are no other hands raised.
No Spanish questions.
Thank you, Oscar. We appreciate you being available for this as our interpreter. How long will these projects take to construct? Does anyone want to tackle that question? And then the next one after that is about the structures and if they could be set up to generate solar power or small fan placement or water coolers.
Ryan or Lana, can you speak to the construction timeline, please?
Yeah, so for the construction, we anticipate it to be around 15 months for the construction to be completed. And as Mary mentioned earlier, so we anticipate the construction to start mid of 2025 and completion end of 2026. Thank you.
And Lana, if I could ask for just a little bit of clarification in terms of the time to install a single shade structure, this question might be concerned about disruption to any individual intersection. Do we have a sense of how long that might take? And Ryan, maybe you have some thoughts on this as well. Yeah, please go ahead, Ryan.
We consulted with fabricators in terms of what they would suggest for installation, and we do believe that they can be constructed at a warehouse and making installation on site really quick. So the actual disruption should be very minimal. If there is any need for staking or temporary placements and pouring concrete on site, we know that there's ways that we can ensure that pedestrians have full access through the intersection and traffic controlled and everything. But our intention is to have them crane lifted off the back of a truck and placed wherever possible.
And Ryan, if I might just piggyback on that, you alluded to very, very short. Is that a time scale on the order of days to weeks?
Yeah, weeks, like a week or two would be all it would need to set. And so just the technical aspects of making sure that the place is first level. So the placement of the structure could use a simple leveling epoxy. And then the concrete structure would then have a flat surface to sit on. So it wouldn't look like much is being done at first, but then all of a sudden the structure shows up.
And to add to this one, I want to say, like, our goal is to minimize the construction duration as much as possible. And also we will avoid any night work. And like what I said, we will try to minimize the traffic control or any the construction duration.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Lana and Ryan. And Heather, in response to the second part of the comment, while this project does not include considerations for solar or charging, water, fans, or some of the other clever ideas mentioned, those concepts may appear in some of these more innovative ideas that Arts and Culture is facilitating with the Office of Innovation. And we certainly try to stay on top of the news and other ideas from peer cities about what those amenities can look like in public space. So thank you.
Excellent. I wanted to go back to Nadine and try and unmute Nadine. And for some reason, it is not letting me unmute you, Nadine. I don't know why. I don't know if your computer isn't sending a signal that you have speakers, but let's get you in touch with the project team or use the chat for us. We did have a question in the chat about, will there be a recording of this presentation? Will we be able to see the slides? And the answer to that question is yes, we're recording it, including all the public comment, and that will be saved and sent over to the HEAT office for posting on their website, along with, I'm presuming, also the slide deck. I'm trying to see some of the chat comments. All right, another couple of questions that were submitted. We answered the question about what are the dimensions of the shade awnings. If you happen to miss that, it'll be captured in the recording as well. There's a question about installing publicly accessible water fountains. That was just answered by Dr. Handula. why are the examples providing only partial shade? I always find those very frustrating. The money and effort should provide solid shade. Would somebody like to tackle that one?
I can speak to it from a technical perspective in terms of how we tackled these designs. There was also the concern about radiant heat, and given the thinness of the material, it did need to have enough openness of reaching an openness percentage of 40% in order to not mitigate the wind load. So as the material becomes more solid, it becomes more like a wind sail, and then would have additional load that would need to be addressed through the design. So in order to be modular, in order to meet the scales and the constraints of the project, we went with that material per our structural engineer's advice.
And Ryan, I'll just piggyback. It's my understanding that you and Mary have certainly been working as hard as possible to push right up against that safety limit. You know, not crossing over it by any means, but really trying to maximize the shade. We do want the shade structures to provide shade, and I applaud your efforts to be sure we're doing that as best possible. And while the overhead view that we showed looks partial, as was described, as the sun, of course, moves to lower angles, we'd be picking up a higher percentage at certain times of the day.
There's a question with the 8-foot low height. Is there a concern with people trying to grab the cover and maybe be, nuisance activity related to that?
That load was anticipated by our structural engineers and has been designed to be compliant with that as well.
And also, I want to add to this one, the minimum height that we have is 10 feet. So we don't have 8 feet.
Yeah, I believe the 8 foot was the diameter of the smaller round module. And then Ryan, I think you said on the angled one, the minimum height on part of the angle was, I think I heard 8 feet 10 inches. Was that right? Or is the minimum 10 feet?
I think it's 8 feet, maybe 11 inches. I have to look at the most up-to-date plans just to verify. Yeah, I see 810 for the one with the greatest angle at the lowest end.
810, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll take it back here. So.
I'm looking through all the questions. I did see one in the Q&A that somebody very thoughtfully put in here about what is the criteria for getting an intersection added or included. And you did talk through the criteria, but if somebody wanted to create a wish list of locations, is there a mechanism to do that?
Well, we couldn't imagine a greater compliment for this project than asking for more. So thank you for that. I'd say for the time being, please email the heat office. We'll get the email in the chat as well. And we are certainly on the look for opportunities to add both built structures and tree shade as we have more federal funding coming and anticipate the possibility of even more.
All right, I think we have gotten to the end of the people that have signed up and are actually in the meeting. If you did not get your question answered, Mary, can we flash up the project team contact information again so that people can maybe jot that down and identify, an opportunity to contact the project team?
Heather, also note, I've received a couple of questions privately in the chat, and I'm not sure they were intentionally meant to be sent privately. It might just be a function of the technology. To protect the identity of these people in case they did meant to ask the questions privately, I'll just summarize quickly. There was one question about the partial shade that I think we just had some good discussion about. But if the person who asked that question would like to share more with us after the meeting, we'd be very happy to continue that conversation. Another one, which really resonates with me with the recent challenges at home, consideration about birds using the shade structures as their own habitat. Ryan, I can't remember that being part of the conversation, but any thoughts on birds?
Birds have not been much of the conversation in terms of space for the birds to be finding anything underneath. I think there's going to be minimal opportunity. The panels, the frame, everything that sort of attaches to the structure doesn't provide a whole lot of large gaps in order for nesting opportunities or anything like that. If there's birds that perch on the edge of the structure, that is a possibility. And I think will have to be observed and remedied if that becomes a problem.
And certainly ties into the maintenance responsibility that the city would have related to these structures. Also, a comment or a concern was expressed about people potentially being able to climb up from the concrete base onto the top of the structure. And we are certainly continuing to work on ensuring that that concrete base is not misappropriated for other purposes other than securing the load of the structure. So that remains a work in progress.
All right, Mary, can I have you share that last page of your presentation one more time? All right, this is how you can get in touch with, if you're viewing on a very small device, it's mary.wright, W-R-I-G-H-T at Phoenix.gov, and Lana, Lana.Nabaty, N-A-B-A-T-Y at Phoenix.gov. Again, there was a plea to provide input to the shade study that's underway. The deadline for that is August 31st, and that is at phoenix.gov/heat. And Bruce has asked me to try one more time to see if I can unmute him, and let me call up the participant list one more time. Bruce. Let's try this. You're unmuted. Bruce, I'm at a loss. Bruce and Nadine, forgive us. Technology has foiled our efforts to get your voice out there today, but hopefully you can jot down the project team information and follow up with us at that point. With that, any final remarks from the project team?
Heather, I'd just like to say thank you to you for helping put this together. Certainly the panelists for joining to share their perspective and their technical expertise. For other members of our city team who have been here to listen to the feedback. We will be working on it collaboratively to chart the next steps forward. And certainly for so many members of the community who took their time today to participate or have participated in some of the many different engagements that led us to this conversation today. Obviously, we are trying to work to serve your interests in delivering this and other tree and shade programs. So thank you.
With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you again for your time.